We're going to talk about National Medical Commission, which has come into being on 25th of September after a 6-decade-old act, that is the Indian Medical Council Act 1956, was repealed. Now, this has been done to ensure better transparency, accountability in the governance of medical education in the country. We'll try and understand all aspects of this particular new commission, that is NMC, and the reasons why it has been brought in. For more on this, we're joined by a distinguished panel of guests. Let me first introduce them to you, beginning with Dr. Rajendra Pandey. He's the member of the new National Medical Commission. We also have with us Ms. Aditi Tandon, special correspondent from the Tribune, who looks after the health aspects. And we are also joined by Dr. R.K. Srivastava, who is the former chairman of the Board of Governors of the erstwhile MCI, that is Medical Council of India. Welcome all of you to Rajya Sabha TV. Let me begin with you, Aditi, and let's start by putting these things in perspective and context for our viewers. Let's start by understanding what is NMC.
You're right. You just mentioned, Vishal, that the National Medical Commission came into force on September 25th. On the night of September 24th, the Centre notified the constitution of this very important commission. It consists of 33 members, out of who 11 will be full-time members, and then there will be 4 autonomous boards to look after UG, undergraduate medical education, postgraduate education, medical assessment and rating, and ethics and registrations of medical institutions. So these are the primary larger structures under the National Medical Commission. Now we ought to understand, Vishal, that why was there a need to actually abolish the Medical Council of India and replace it altogether with a new medical regulator, which the NMC will now function as. So I would take the viewers back to 2016, when a very important report by the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Health was submitted. It was the 92nd committee report, and it had come out with very stern and very major observations against the functioning of the Medical Council of India. The committee had gone on to say that MCI is ridden with corruption, and the systems have been actually, they are beyond repair, and therefore a new legislation was recommended by the Parliamentary Committee. So in 2016, Vishal, the first draft of the National Medical Commission Bill was actually prepared by the Niti Aayog. Since 2016 until last year on August 8th, 2019, the President gave his assent to the National Medical Commission Bill, and it became an act, because it was last year that the Union Cabinet finally approved this particular commission after a lot of stakeholder consultations. So the idea was to altogether repeal and abolish the Medical Council of India and set up a new medical regulator with greater focus and with the objective of actually unshackling the sector. Because you see, for years, in fact, the Medical Council of India Act came into force in 1956, Vishal, but the Medical Council of India in some form has been functional since 1933. At that time, of course, it was a body of eminent doctors and specialists, that was another time. But over the years, the MCI became, ridden with corruption. It was an elected body. There were many question marks raised on the way they used to license colleges. Serious charges of corruption were leveled against the former president of MCI, Mr. Ketan Desai, and you would remember that the CBI also booked him. So the MCI had been, brought into a lot of ignominy, and the Parliamentary Standing Committee thought in its wisdom that there is no point repairing a damaged structure. It is better to start over. And with that objective, the National Medical Commission was formulated, and it has now taken charge. Dr. Suresh Chandra Sharma, who's the HOD of ENT in AIIMS, New Delhi, has been appointed the chairperson, and 4 people have been appointed as presidents of the 4 autonomous boards, which will look after different, verticals of medical education. Earlier, the MCI was handling everything pertaining to medical education, UG education, PG, medical rating, everything, registration of doctors. And there were a lot of complaints that it has become a superpower in itself. And there's an old adage that absolute power corrupts absolutely. So the new system is hopefully a better one, and the expectation of the entire country is not only will the sector be unshackled, More medical colleges will be set up, because you see, India is facing an acute shortage of human resources and health, and we need to improve our doctor-patient ratio. And that is the larger objective of the National Medical Commission, which of course also has been mandated to rank medical colleges for the first time. It is proposed under the NMC Act, Vishal, that a national ranking of all medical institutions in India will be done. But of course, we'll talk about that later in the show.
Those are the broad contours which Aditi has brought out. And in fact, there are quite a number of built-in checks and balances as far as NMC Act is concerned. Let me bring in Dr. R.K. Srivastava here. Dr. Srivastava, the transparency, accountability and quality of the governance of medical education in the country has been under question for quite some time. So NMC seemingly is the right and the best answer?
So, it is definitely a solution conceived after a lot of thinking on the matter prevailing with the Medical Council of India. Now, without having it in place, operating and delivering goods, it will be a little bit difficult to say that it will ensure transparency, it will increase accountability, and it will be able to produce clinicians which are needed by a country like India. But having said that, let me try to put before you that the structural changes which has been integrated in the NMC are giving a feeling that the NMC may be able to do a better, transparent job to produce clinician required for India.
Okay.
Say, for example, 4 boards which has been constituted, they have got single task, one for UG, one for PG, one for the registration, one for the ethics. They have got single task. So a uni-task board with an independent head will be able to take the call in more holistic manner, transparent manner, and focused manner. This was the one charge which was put up on the previous Medical Council, that all the boards function under the so-called president and follow the command of the president, which ultimately result in corruptions and lack of the transparency. So that is one point. The second thing which we should also look at, that the NMC is coming at the time when many reform has already been brought in by the Board of Governors.
Okay.
That the first and the foremost important thing is the competency-based undergraduate curriculum. Now, this competency-based undergraduate curriculum is a very holistic task which has been completed by the previous Board of the Governors, which ultimately aim at only one thing, that you should have a measurable competency when you qualify as MBBS degree holder. And that competency should match to the requirement of the needs of the public who are seeking healthcare. So that curriculum has been put up, that curriculum has been made mandatory, and now the undergraduate board will have to ensure the single task moving forward in this direction.
Okay.
So it will be able to move forward to produce clinician in the numbers as well as quality which is needed by the country. And the third, the most important thing is that it has tried to create a single benchmark for the doctors who ultimately go into the practice. It has got a exit exam. When you complete your all professionals, you have to pass through an exam which will be a test to judge the measurable competencies, which allows you interstate mobility, which allows you doing care related to the various illness, which is comparable with each other and which is not at all below any type of standard.
Okay.
So having said that, I feel that all the three parameters which you have talked about, if this National Medical Commission, its four board, they function well and they are provided all that independence to operate and the money is adequately invested in it, I hope that in coming times, we will definitely be able to achieve the target with which this board has been, this NMC has been constituted.
Okay. These are some of the, definitely points high on the agenda as far as NMC's working is concerned or its goals are concerned. Let me bring in Dr. Rajendra Pandey here to, throw some more light on how the National Medical Commission plans to navigate through the challenges it has to achieve all these three aspects, transparency, the quality, as well as the accountability in governing of medical education. Dr. Pandey, what's the plan as far as NMC's working is concerned?
I mean, it has just been notified. The NMC is yet to meet and formulate how it would be working forward. But going by the task given to it, the consensus would be first to map out the human resource gap. And then obviously trying to bridge the gap between the requirement as well as what we are presently having. A time frame in which it can be bridged. That is the first goal. And then what relaxation can be appropriately made, maintaining the quality of education, so that the number of doctors that can be produced can be increased in shortest possible time. That is the first thing to do.
Okay.
And then inspecting those areas and finding the gaps in infrastructure and the time frame with talking to the states where it can be developed for that. That should be the first criteria on which NMC should be going ahead. Second thing, it is also important that paramedical personnel who would be working with doctors, they also need, their gap also need to be ascertained. And part of the curriculum which is mostly being done by the doctors, their curriculum is also not revised. And that needs to be done so that a greater task which presently the doctors are doing at the peripheral level can be taken up by those paramedics under the guidance of doctors.
Okay.
That would be second thing. And the most important thing with the society is expecting of weeding out the corruption in terms of registration of the colleges, and then keeping a proper vigilance on this so that the appraisal of the execution of curriculum is taking place or not, so that the competency is ascertained, and so that all the students who are passing out can be immediately productive in the society. And the most important thing is that a large number of students are being forced to go abroad in order to become a doctor from India. And this is what is to be ascertained, and should find out that these people can be trained in India so that they are appropriately trained as per the need of Indian society rather than being trained in a foreign medical college.
Okay.
This is what we should be concentrating more on.
Okay. But Dr. Pandey, if you look at, the features of this particular act or the powers which has been given to it, as Aditi was pointing out, quite a number of checks and balances there. Do you agree?
Definitely, sir. They need to be there so that the powers are not concentrated, because they are more likely to be abused if they are concentrated. Now that this board should be functioning independently, and I would also suggest that probably in due course of time, there should be a mechanism of social audit of what is being done, so that the function of this NMC is also appropriately achieved due course of time, rather than waiting for another 7 decades to understand that it has not served the purpose. So the society as well as all stakeholders need to be on vigilance.
Okay. And the reforms which have been, set in motion, as Dr. Srivastava was pointing out, by the erstwhile Board of Governors of the MCI, specifically with respect to the competency-based curriculum, because that is where seemingly the disconnect is.
Sir, exit examination will serve at least part of that purpose, for getting an uniformity for practicing in license. But not only the regulatory, beyond that, we also need to have a pool of, say, people who can apprise. They may be retired person who have a vast experience of in medical education, so that they should visit different medical colleges for hand-holding to bring the level of training to a point where competence would be achieved by as of expected by the students.
Okay. Okay. Aditi and Dr. Srivastava as well, one by one, the same question I'd like to put to both of you. Now that Dr. Pandey has sort of, explained the course of action, the plan of action rather, the way the National Medical Commission plans to go ahead and, navigate through all these challenges. Do you agree that these are the key focus areas? First, you, Aditi.
I do broadly agree with what Dr. Pandey has just said, and I heartily welcome his suggestion of a social audit. It's a very, very welcome suggestion if it can be brought in, nothing like that. But looking at the current structure of the National Medical Commission, Vishal, as far as I have understood and analyzed the commission and its aims and objectives, in my opinion, the most important reform that this particular commission is expected to execute is to actually reduce the burden on the students of medicine and improve the quality of the Indian medical graduate. You see, ever since the Medical Council of India was set up, Vishal, the entire focus of the regulator was on the input. For example, hospital is set up, a medical college is set up, what is the infrastructure available, how many rooms are there, how many tables are there, lecture hall, land. Right now, the National Medical Commission is going to focus on the quality of the MBBS graduate who is going out of college. And that is the objective and the wisdom behind the National Exit Test. Now, you see, National Exit Test is not a simple test. It is a very big reform because this one test is going to serve three purposes. Not only will it serve as a uniform MBBS exam across India, you see, right now, every college has its own pattern for MBBS final exams, which is why the quality of the medical graduate coming out of a college in Uttar Pradesh may not be the same as the quality of the graduate coming out of a college in Karnataka. There are various standards of education in MBBS final examination. The National Medical Commission will develop a uniform MBBS final exam, which it will call the National Exit Test. The MBBS graduates will be given a license based on the performance in this test. This exit test will also serve as the entrance test in future for postgraduate courses.
Okay.
And the standalone NEET PG exam will stand abolished in due course of time after the structures have been put in place. The third thing that this National Exit Test proposes to do is end the standalone examination conducted right now for the foreign medical graduates. Indian students who go abroad to take foreign medical degrees and come back, they need a license, Vishal, to practice in India. Right now, they sit for a separate examination. Once the National Exit Test modalities are ready, only one test will be required for three purposes. So you see, the burden on students is going to come down. The cost of conducting examinations is going to come down.
Okay.
And the second most important reform which this National Medical Commission is going to propose is the regulation of fees in all private colleges and deemed universities. This is for the first time in the history of medical education, Vishal, that on 50% seats in all private medical colleges and deemed universities, the government is proposing some sort of fee regulation. Obviously, that will have to be done in consultation with the state governments, and that is a welcome move because you see, getting into a medical college is an uphill task. You need money to do it.
Definitely.
And the thinking behind the NMC has been that everybody, poor children who come from economically weaker sections but who are intelligent, you don't need money to be a good doctor, Vishal. The history of medical education is replete with examples where people from humble backgrounds have gone on to become great surgeons and physicists and medical specialists. So the idea is to open up the medical sector to all kinds of strata of society, even the economically weaker sections. And the third most important thing that this particular commission is going to do is that it is going to rank the colleges, the students who appear in exit test. How many of them have actually passed that exit test? That will be the marker of the quality of education being provided by a particular medical college. So medical colleges will compete with each other for students, not like today that you give some money and get into a medical college.
And that will raise the standards of the quality as well.
That is going to change. And the fourth thing is the community health provider. The National Medical Commission has proposed something like a community health provider, which is expected and which is proposed to have limited rights to dispense medicines. That standard will be evolved. Dr. Pandey can reflect better on that. And the idea behind that is that India is going to have 1.5 lakh sub-centers under the Ayushman Bharat mission, Vishal, who is going to man those sub-centers, because MBBS graduates and doctors are not willing to go to villages. Who is going to go to those sub-centers and look after people in the close village communities? So in a separate cadre, a separate cadre of community health providers is proposed under the National Medical Commission. And Dr. Pandey can tell us what the commission thinks about it, how will it go forward, because that will create a parallel structure.
Definitely.
Vishal, we are the only country in the world where only a medical graduate can actually dispense medicines. In most of the Western countries, the right to dispense medicines has been given to a vast specialty of people, including nurses.
That indeed is a very important point, regulating community health providers. And I'd like to bring in Dr. Pandey as well. But before that, Dr. Srivastava, your views on the key focus areas, as both Dr. Pandey and Aditi also added on to these aspects, be it, the competency-based curriculum or the national exit, test, or ranking the institutes as well. In addition to that, do you believe there must be few more areas as well, or is this the overall holistic approach?
No, I think while I agree with Aditi and Dr. Pandey, but basically now let us realize that from 25th onward, there is no board of governor. There is NMC. The second thing we should remember that on 13th this month, NEET examination was conducted. Next month, result will come. After that, counseling will start. And in all probabilities, in November, the admission will start. This is a 6-month delayed admission this time. So the first task, the challenge which is there with the National Medical Commission, particularly the undergraduate board, is to prepare the existing 480 medical college to build up capacities and carry out the competency-based curriculum in that format. And that is a mammoth task. Now, this task is dependent on the faculty available, the infrastructure available over there. So whatever they do, they will not be able to create that big amount of faculties. They have to depend on the technology. So that is one challenge which they must handle quick and fast. The second challenge is very important. The second challenge is something like this, that after 6 months, when the next regular batch will come in the month of July 2021, there will be doubling of the batch. It means if a medical college has got 100 students in year 1 and 100 students in year 2, then there will be an overlapping period of 6 months when there will be 200 students. And at that time, teacher and student mismatch will be there. So that is the time when again the technology will come. And all these things, if the medical council of this board, the National Medical Commission board undergraduate will be able to handle properly, it will form a foundation for the PG admission and the overload which is going to take place on that. Doing it successfully will give enough credibility to the NMC, and then all those things which Aditi has talked about and Dr. Pandey has talked about the exit examination, about the giving power to the paramedics for dispensing some medicines, quality assurance through the various other means, they can be taken care. I give you just simple, very few words of simple example. The competency-based curriculum asks for a small group teaching. A small group is a 10 student. No medical college has got a capacity to create that much of faculty to do this small group teaching. At the end of the day, they have to depend on virtual teacher, they have to apply the digital technology, and without that, the target of creating one doctor for 1,000 population as against the present one doctor against 1,655 population will never be achieved.
Okay. Okay, definitely. These are the immediate challenges as far as NMC is concerned, as Dr. Srivastava is pointing out, and use of technology will be really, really important. But before we bring this discussion to an end, one last question to Dr. Pandey here. Dr. Pandey, on the regulation of community health workers, as Aditi pointed out, that seemingly is also a very, very important aspect.
So at this moment, NMC is restricting to only two categories of paramedics, which can be trained very shortly, in a short time, to be of some use to the society. The first is nursing medical practitioners, who have graduated can be specifically trained in certain areas and can be given legitimate power to practice, have a limited practice in the periphery. And the second is the pharmacist, who have a clinic, if they are given the clinical knowledge of pharmacology, in the peripheral areas, a large amount of dispensing for smaller ailments can be taken care of by them. And that would reduce the burden on medical practitioners. And if it is done so, many of the follow-up therapy can be done at home or even at peripheral centers by telemedicine, by not visiting the community block health center or the tertiary and secondary centers. So that would be very much cost effective for a country like us.
Okay.
And we should go ahead for that.
Okay. Okay, there it is. Thank you so much, Dr. Rajendra Pandey, Dr. R.K. Srivastava, as well as Aditi, for sharing your views with us and our viewers on this very important aspect there. This is all about National Medical Commission, rather, which has been set up after abolishing the 6-decade-old act which had MCI with all the powers. Now, there are numerous challenges as far as this particular commission is concerned, and we will get to know